we people from Western society live in a happy bubble. The way we communicate nowadays changed. We actually write more than meet each other, and visuals in such communication plays a really important part. Therefore, Unicode Consortium, in request of the biggest technology and social media companies, introduced Emoji, which is basically a digital writing system that allows us to communicate in visuals. You probably all know those, right? Like, I'm curious, how many of you never use emojis? Still no one. I expected few hands, actually, but well, what actual statistics say that most of the smartphone users use emojis regularly, and young people use it almost every day or every day. And I thought that it's a lot. So as a graphic designer, I felt an urge to intervene in such a visual language that is so implemented in the way we communicate nowadays. And if we look where those emojis are used mostly, which is obviously a social media, we would see that people discuss various topics and not only happy superficial stories. So people discuss topics related with politics, social issues, or even global problems. But in such topics, it becomes hard to communicate with emojis because the list that is currently used is filled with positive, non-critical icons. So if we think about emoji, we probably think of something like this, which is, I chose this one because this is the most used emoji ever. And it means tears of joy. However, I think that life is not only joy, and if we really use this language, if we really use this as a language to communicate and make our context clear and to represent our emotions, maybe next to this emoji we should have something like this to talk about freedom of speech suppression. Or there are a lot of topics that are related with war, which is actually happening in the Middle East. But we can't talk about war or bombing by using these emojis, this cartoon bomb, because this is the one that is like more similar to the one that is actually used to kill people there. And if next to regular water droplets emoji, we would have like a blood emoji, we would already be able to tell alternative story related with war. We also have this beautiful shiny globe emoji. But what we actually do with our planet Earth is a massive scale pollution, which in an illustrative way turns Earth into something like this, and eventually causes global warming. And you see all these elements, they already have metaphoric representation. Therefore, they can be represented in illustration or eventually in emojis. The latest Facebook scandal, where a lot of our data was actually used against us, reminds us about privacy problems. So maybe we should have something like iconic CCTV camera to talk about privacy issues and massive surveillance. So together, like inspired by the biggest recent protests around the world and topics on the internet, together with my colleagues and few other artists, we created a set of emojis. And even it's a small collection of symbols, it already allows to tell alternative, different story, not so happy story. However, even though I made those emojis, as they would already be ready to use, I wouldn't really want them to become part of our list, because I believe that these topics are too complex to become an emoji. And we shouldn't communicate such things in the style of emoji because it's now a happy thing. What I wanted to show that big companies that chooses emojis actually tries to avoid any negative annotations and therefore creates a kind of illusion of a happy world that we live in. And for me as a designer, these beloved emojis became a way to remind stories that are also worth spreading. Thank you.